Hey, everybody. Welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby. And of course, this show is all for small, medium-sized nonprofits doing wonderfully great big things. And if you're a small or medium-sized nonprofit and you think you can't do great big things like social enterprise and making money and having to be a pauper of an organization, I have news for you. You don't have to. And that's why I have a guest on today who is going to walk us through the idea of what social enterprise is. We're going to talk about scaling up your nonprofit and your nonprofit business. Man, this is going to be super exciting today here on the official Do Good Better podcast. So I've got my friend Ryan Mehaffey. He's the CEO and founder of Feastoverfamine. And he has an organization and a story that I think you'll all enjoy. Ryan, thanks for being on the official Do Good Better podcast.
Yeah, Patrick, thanks for having me. Super excited to talk and dive into social enterprise and share the work we're doing.
I think I'm going to be very excited about people clicking through. They're going to see YouTube. They're going to see all these Apple things. And they're going to say, Feast over Famine. This sounds intriguing. But they have no idea who you are or what you do. So at a 5,000-foot level, let's get the backstory on how you became an entity and go from there.
Yeah, right on. So we've been around for since about 2016. We kind of accidentally stumbled into consulting, social enterprise clients. But our story really begins back in college for me. I went to Marquette, a good Midwest Jesuit institution, and really just this idea of social justice blending with a business degree started to come together for me. I took a trip to India and we were doing basically social enterprise, business as mission style consulting. And I fell in love with it. And I thought, man, I want to do this every day the rest of my life. And I need to go support myself and pay my rent and get through my career and all this stuff. And so kind of went that path and said, we're going to put that off in the future. And over the next, 5-10 years, that just started to stir in me. And in 2015, left my corporate career, went to Eastern Europe, did some consulting on projects there, came back, worked for social enterprise where we started our consulting company kind of as a one-off. And then in March of 2018, decided to do this kind of big blown up version. We're working with tons of organizations, and that led us to this past March, a couple months ago, and we rebranded to Feast Over Famine. And we're really diving into it. And I know we're going to talk about a bunch more of that, but that's your, 50,000 foot view of a little bit of the story of where we've come from.
I love the name, because I think a lot of nonprofits see themselves as upstarts that, hey, listen, we're just going to get by. It's going to be fine. If we don't have a lot of revenue coming in, that's fine. We'll just do good. And I think this idea of abundance needs to be latched onto because there is so much revenue and money available. There's so many investors. There's so many donors. You have to wrap your head around the idea of social enterprise in order to just start. So walk me through some of maybe the nonprofit work that you have done and how you change mindset first. Because is that the first thing you need to tweak out of the gate?
Yeah, it's kind of depended for us. And I want to kind of circle back to one thing you said. Like from the beginning, we've said there's a finite pool of money out there, right? So when we look at individual donors and corporate donors and foundations and grants and government money and all these different things out there, like there's a finite pool of money, right? If in Colorado where we're based, there's like 15 new nonprofits opening every single day, it seems, and they're all fighting for the same pool. And eventually something's going to break about that. Now I think there's work to be done. I think you're doing a great job of it, of inspiring people's level of generosity. But at a certain point, we need to look outside of this pool that we've been living in, right? And if we can blend economics, all the money that's out there, goods, services, the markets, like globally, there's a ton of money being spent. And if we can blend that with this giving model, now we've opened up potential to use a ton more money. And, one of you got your question about nonprofits and mindset a little bit, what we change. And the first thing I want to say is just because social enterprise is awesome doesn't mean it's right for everybody. So that's just the first thing I want to say. There's some organizations that kind of think, hey, nonprofit, we need to go social enterprise, and it just doesn't work. So really our goal isn't as an organization to say, let's get rid of nonprofits and fundraising. Let's just find the opportunities where we can use social enterprise, free up that money, and now it can go to another organization. Now it's just a global society. We're serving way more people than we ever dreamed of because we just took $10 billion and put it towards, instead of 10 organizations splitting it, now only 5 are, because the other 5 are self-sustaining. So I think just kind of off of what you said there and a little bit of the mindset shift, we're really looking to make that happen. It's not an either or, it's a battle between the two, or one's better. It's more, this is a piece of the puzzle to help serve people more.
I think a lot of that, and that's the outside of the box thinking that I think a lot of organizations need to address. And I think now during sort of this global pandemic, you get an opportunity to kind of look inward and say, are we doing really the most amount of good, or are we raising the most amount of money that we can, or are we funding this to the fullest of best of our abilities? And if you're not taking the time to look at this while you're there's a pause or a downturn in activity, I think you're missing out. And I think this is really what sparked my interest in a conversation with you today, is because thinking differently and outside of the box, and again, there's a million terms you can use for that.
Yeah.
Thinking outside of the box is really critical now, because you need to be different in order to secure somebody thinking, wow, that's an interesting thing I never thought about. Or, I didn't know this organization exists, or I didn't know you were doing the things you were doing. What a cool, unique way on how to build revenue for those that you serve, which is the ultimate goal of fundraising in the first place. And if you only have that as your only model, if you're only doing grants, if you're only doing special events, you're in a box that you cannot escape from. Is detrimental to your mission of serving those who you have dedicated your life to, right?
Yeah, totally. No, and it's you know, it's even a blend for a lot of organizations where it says, hey, look, your earned income is going to be 60% of social enterprise, earned income revenue. And let's keep the other 40% as normal nonprofit income, or maybe it's a 90% as your normal donor base and 10% is this, but it's something, and it can grow. We have a client that we've worked with that, they have an idea to sell these career journals. They do after school programming for girls to help them get involved in STEM careers. Now you can't really turn that into, they've tried models, right, where they charge the kids, but then you get into weird stuff where you get into lower income communities and now the kids can't pay for the after school programming. So do you convince, the wealthier parts of town to pay more money so that the younger, now you're almost asking your constituents and clients to pay. And it gets really weird in social enterprise, right? So for them, it doesn't make totally sense to make that into a full social enterprise model, but they're helping girls with STEM careers. So why not create a career journal that walks them through that and sell that as a product? Now it's not going to be, 50% of their $200,000 a year budget, but it's something. And it's spurring onto that, they can do a podcast like what we're doing, and they could do commercials with for-profit engineering companies that want to pay to be on there and get in front of girls to change the gender gap instead. So, sometimes I think we get into this, like, it's got to be all or nothing and it's got to be perfect. And I want to share that example to say, start small if you can. Now, if you can start big too. We're working on a farm project in Africa where we're buying 1,500 acres of farmland to employ 100 people and subsidize 1 million meals. And that's a big splash, right? Yeah. But you can do the little splash too, and it's okay, and it makes sense.
Talk to me about what social enterprise is. I think there might be folks who are listening or watching who say, okay, I kind of understand what you're talking about. It might be a product involved. It might be a sales of something. If you were completely ignorant to what social enterprise is, walk me through the basics of the basics on kind of how to wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Well, our mission statement is to help servant-hearted organizations to scale effectively. That's our consulting side of what we do, right? But to navigate the tension where mission and profit collide.
There you go.
So I think the baseline, somewhat of a definition of social enterprise is mission and profit collide, and it creates tension. It's not normal. It's not what we're used to. As a definition, I mean, what we say is you're bringing the best parts of the for-profit world and the best parts of the nonprofit world together, and you're trying to serve more people as a result. We have a graphic on our website. I got it pulled up over here. On the left side, we have, you think of it like your general Venn diagram almost. In the middle is social enterprise. On the left side, you've got nonprofits, and they bring to the table impact acumen, what we call it. They have an understanding of how to make an impact in people's lives. They're not gonna, it's the whole when helping hurts model. Like, they just kind of get that, your nonprofit executive directors. Purpose and mission drives them. It's not the bottom line every day. It's purpose and mission. They have a local needs knowledge. Most nonprofits that are really successful, it's not a bunch of white dudes around a table in North Dakota deciding what someone needs in Africa. It's someone in Africa that says, wow, this is what's happening on the ground and what's needed. So impact acumen, purpose and mission, local needs knowledge. That's what the nonprofit side brings. On the for-profit side, you have business acumen. I mean, we've seen a lot of nonprofits that have really struggled to manage teams and manage culture and grow. Now you have a lot of nonprofits that have done a great job of that, but I think oftentimes people, their heart stumbles them into a place of leading this 10, 15, 30 person organization doing really, really good work, and their heart's there. And they just kind of get a little out of their wheelhouse on how to manage a large team because they've never done it. And that makes sense. So the for-profit side is the business acumen. They have the fiscal self-sustainability is what we call it. You're not going to get by as a for-profit company without being fiscally self-sustainable. A nonprofit kind of can. I mean, you've got to make your books balance every year. You've got to bring in more than you spend in different things. But a lot of the donors don't necessarily care that all the nuts and bolts financially are there to say, you guys are crushing it. You're self-sustaining long-term on a 10-year sheet. And then the last piece on the for-profit side is the strategic scaling knowledge. And that kind of goes to business acumen, but it's thinking, man, 10, 15, 20 years, 5 years, 1 year, 3, or whatever that is. How do we scale this thing and scale it well? So when we look at those two sides and we say, man, social enterprise would be where all those things collide in a really healthy way, and people are served extremely well as a result of it.
More money, more mission. That's it. I mean, it comes down to if you could raise more, make more, you can serve more. And that's really what the point of this conversation is. So you mentioned at the end of this was scale. Walk me through a small, medium-sized nonprofit that's ready to scale. What are some of the indicators that you're seeing that you know, part of that business acumen? How do you go from a 1-person to a 4-person to a 10-person staff? That takes a lot of business knowledge. But when does the scale need to happen, or when do you recognize as a nonprofit you need to scale up?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we constantly have to be challenging ourselves to iterate and think progressively. So you should always be thinking about scale in some way. You know, you should always be thinking, man, that's a cool idea. Now we separate leaders into kind of 2 categories. One is the visionary and one is the execution one. And you've probably seen this a million times. The visionary leader is the one who has 100 ideas. They're chasing the new thing all the time. They're always out doing coffees and like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. We're going to collaborate on this. It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
And maybe 1% of those things happen, and you almost lose the operational maturity, efficiency of the organization gets lost. But it's really good because those are the organizations like, you know, a Steve Jobs is someone who is that visionary and has the ability to efficiently make it happen in the organization. But a lot of times the visionary is off doing that thing. The executionary side is a leader that's, you know, they are buttoned up, project management, the organization runs smoothly, but they're lacking that ability to say, man, what could we be? Right. So I think first in scale is saying, understanding as a leader, like, where do you sit there and how do you fill that gap in terms of like what's going to happen? If you have 100 ideas because you're visionary, it's a matter of putting pen to paper and saying which ones work and implementing them. And you probably need to surround yourself with someone who can do that. If you're the executionary side, it's surrounding yourself with the dreamers and challenging yourself out of your comfort zone to go do that. And when we, like as an organization, come in, we're trying to identify and kind of play the role of the opposite. So I think that's one step. And then the other step in understanding that oftentimes is, you know, how are you, a lot of nonprofit leaders come out of a heart standpoint. You know, a lot of these small, medium size, they see a need, their heart breaks and like, I need to do something about this. You know, you see the same thing in the trades. You end up with a guy who starts a roofing company or a contracting company or handyman, right? They get 3-5 years down the line, they find themselves running a $300,000-$400,000 landscaping company. I don't know how to do this. All I know how to do is landscaping. And that's okay. Like, you and I aren't going to go, well, you're like lawn of the week in your neighborhood. I know, but like overall, you and I aren't going to go run a massive landscaping company, but you can surround yourself with the right people to come alongside you and help you. And I think in the nonprofit space, you can only grow it so far out of your heart before you recognize I have gaps. I'm not a CFO, and that's okay. And for some reason, we've taught and told nonprofit executive directors and leaders and social enterprise leaders that they have to be everything and they have to grow into this when that's not the reality of it. So I think those are just, as you start thinking about scaling, if anything I said there is something you're identifying with, like, okay, yeah, you're hitting the points. Think about scaling, you know, but also just always think about it. You know, think about growing and doing that.
Yeah, I think when we suggest to nonprofits, they think more business-like. I think they immediately go to obscene profits, smoke-filled rooms. I don't care about the little guy anymore. I forget where I came from,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And I think we jump to that logical conclusion because
Yeah.
we're inundated with now what big crisis or big, jerk
Yep.
did something to his corporation. You're not going to get that corporation-y big. You're not. And God bless you for dreaming that, but your two-person operation ain't going to be a multi-bazillion-dollar international corporation in the next 5 years. That's not how it works. And I think to wrap our brains around it, what you're suggesting is to act more like businessy, is to take all of the strengths that you have and figure out where they go to implement a lot of processes. And that process itself is going to be business-like. And that's going to put you in a better position to execute your programming better, because now you aren't wasting time trying to do X, Y, and Z. You're actually in the field doing the things the government can't, shouldn't, and won't do.
Yeah.
That's where your mission is, and that's where your heart is. Yeah.
Yeah. And a big piece of scaling too is taking care of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many organizations have scaled well, or so many boards have come in, and you end up with 10 people on your board, you're 200, 300K as a nonprofit, you're starting to grow, and you start to destroy the leader and their motivation and all those things. And so you've got to think as a leader, what drives me here? Don't build your role 3-5 years from now to be one where you don't get to go out weekly and be face to face with the people that made you want to do this in the first place. So much of scale is like, oh, money, strategy, there's this coaching side that's like, no, there's a very personal side of growing as a leader and doing that. And we throw that out of the scaling conversation way too easily a lot of the time. And we've all seen countless stories of leaders that have gone off the deep end and not having that protection.
And I think part of this too, and we acknowledge in the nonprofit world, we got one of the toughest jobs and the loneliest job. There is nobody who's more lonely than a fundraiser who can't talk to another fundraiser, because they can't let on that they're frustrated or just heartbroken or just tired or freaking exhausted from that constant grind. And that business model, that scalability, is part of acknowledging that you need somebody to chat with who's a peer and who's a mentor. And that sort of needs to happen on a fairly regular basis. That leads to social enterprise, like finding, all right, here's your scale, you find an opportunity, and now maybe social enterprise is something that you could consider at an organization. What are some of the examples? You gave a couple, one with the journal and a couple of things you were doing. Let's just say you're a small, medium-sized nonprofit. You're working in human services. You have a lot of knowledge, let's just say, in training. Walk me through what this might look like in a social enterprise outfit, where you've got carnal knowledge everywhere. You're really good at training people to do the things you want to do. How do we combine this to be socially entrepreneur-minded?
Yeah. I mean, so I think there's a couple questions asked. The first one, we do this really cool strategy exercise sometimes where we try to look at a matrix of all these things. And on one side of it, it's what is the business potential? And on the other side of it is what is the social good preservation almost and potential? Because you don't want to be so focused. We'll take an example. Organization here in Denver does light scale manufacturing work. And I'm kind of going off of your human services question, but I'm circling back to it here. They do light scale manufacturing to give job skills training to people coming out of incarceration, homelessness, addiction, right? They could make a wood table in their wood shop. They have a wood shop, a sew shop, and manufacturing that they sell for $2,500. But their participants only touch maybe 2% of the work because it's a high-end table. Now, is that a good model? I mean, it's great money, great profit, but you're not really doing this like social good preservation of what your work is. Now, maybe you can make a mid-tier table that they can do 50% of the work on. That's better, The flip side of that is to say, well, we want our guys to make, our girls to make only, we want them to do 100% of the table, and we're only able to sell it for $10. Well, that's not going to be profitable.
Yeah.
So you really have to, when you're thinking about this, no matter what the scenario is, you have to think about, is there a market potential, and how does that relate to serving the people we're trying to serve well and giving them the experience they want? So in your human services training work, it's what does the market need? I mean, is the training that they do something that other nonprofits might pay for? Is it a training model that, you know, government funding for prisons would totally latch onto that training to try to bridge the gaps so the recidivism rates are lower? You know, so start thinking about market potential out there. We've seen the jewelry model overseas happen a million times of a social enterprise. You go in, these women make beautiful jewelry. We're going to set up a jewelry shop and then we're going to sell it online. And what you found is a flooded market of this kind of stuff, and different websites that even try to bring it all together. But a lot of international experts in the business as mission social enterprise space have said, that's not an amazing model. Now, you go into Kazakhstan or Tajikistan and you do yak hunting with locals and sell yak wool in a really unique way. Now, that's a product that people all over the world are going to do because it's very unique to that region and there's a market potential for it. So you have to be creative and think about what that looks like. And that starts with just a big brainstorming session. You know, bring in the people around you, bring in your board, bring in all those people and just start throwing ideas up there and see which of the 20 stick, and which one makes the most sense. But don't jeopardize your social good side. It's got to go through all those filters.
Yeah, I think the two things that stood out to me were when you were just talking is be creative. I think a lot of nonprofits get scared with the idea of being creative because they think it's going to have mission creep, or they're going to go down a line that says, well, we're a very serious organization. If we get creative, it's going to be fun, and fun doesn't sound like we're going to, oh, that's not it. It's thinking differently about what you can bring to the table, and it's thinking differently about how you can build revenue so that you can serve more people. That's really where the creative comes. The other one too is that you mentioned that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think a lot of nonprofits go all in one way or another. We have to be 100% efficient in our thing, or we're going to be bold and audacious, and nary the two shall meet.
Totally.
I think that's the interesting part about the concept that you're talking about is forcing nonprofits to have a conversation with themselves to say, what's my balance point about giving an opportunity to raise a crap load of money so that we can do a boatload of good without compromising our amazing mission and vision, values, and whatever our true north is. And that's where I think this social enterprise thing is so fascinating, is that it is a part of, it ties back to really what we talked about originally, which is this is a part of your larger story. This doesn't have to be the be all end all, but it can be supplemental. It's the same way that you would throw a new event. It would be the same thing on doing another appeal. That is supplemental to your revenue or your fundraising coming in. I think if we think about it that way, all our nonprofit brains now circle and go, oh, this makes total sense now.
Yeah. If you brainstorm and you come up with a social enterprise business model and it works perfectly, start a for-profit company for it. I mean, the whole point of the nonprofit versus for-profit is a tax deductible part to kind of inspire people or convince people that it's worth it to donate in a sense. I'm belittling that a lot in how I'm saying that, but that's the core difference between a 501c3 and a for-profit. Now, if you do a for-profit coffee shop for at-risk youth, and that requires you to, you'd probably make 15% profit margin in a normal coffee shop, say, and now you're negative 10% because you have to hire an extra staff member to coach them. Right. Now you're leaning to where you probably need to fundraise for that little bit. So become a nonprofit, or a B Corp, or however you want to do that. We don't have to get into all that right now, but that's the difference. Now, if you have a kitchen and bathroom remodeling company right now, and you're making $2 million a year and you're profitable, and you can just hire 2 or 3 extra guys that are trying to get off of addiction or incarceration, or women who are doing that, whatever that is, or women coming out of human trafficking, wanting to give them hope in that, just keep your for-profit business. And, if your profit margin is 35%, drop it to 27 and hire a couple team members extra to coach them and get them back. Like, that's the beauty of this. Like you're saying, there's no right, wrong way to do that. So, one of our pillars as an organization is Feast Over Famine is we don't live in black and white. We consider tension navigating is what we try to do. It's not black and white. It's super gray, and the sooner we can realize that life is gray, leadership is gray, and serving people globally is really gray, the easier this stuff becomes, because we say, it's not going to be this perfect split. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, and bring the people alongside you in that process to help you navigate that tension so you're not in it alone.
I think I like the idea of a business, a for-profit business doing good, and they are allowed to do that under this social enterprise sort of concept as well. You don't have to be the all-encompassing money-making machine. You can still reach out and give back and be that leader within the whole, quote, nonprofit realm by giving chances, by not doing exceeding background checks, or not eliminating whatever you want from a formerly incarcerated individual. Right? So you can do a lot of this good as a business and still claim to be social enterprise. And I think that is another route that says, why wouldn't you make more money mentoring others who then use you as a reference to go and form a business that you then merge with, or they drum up your business because they're better salespeople. We've got a gentleman here in North Dakota who's been saying drug dealers are the best salespeople in the entire world. Yeah, that might be a fact, right? They're the best hustlers in the world. Why wouldn't you get to hire them to make business better for you because they know the art of persuasion? I think that type of social entrepreneurship and that social enterprise mindset can be both a for-profit and a nonprofit realm too.
I think a theme here is we're blending these two worlds. Like, we've looked at nonprofit as the good people and for-profit as the horrible, evil people. And it's time to be done with that. It's time to recognize both have value. Let's bring them together. And that's why we struggled with our mission statement for a while when we were rebranding to say, like, who do we serve? Because 60% of our clients had been nonprofit and 40% had been for-profit, and a lot had been social enterprise. And that's where we came up with this servant-hearted organizations. Start thinking of people and humans when you meet them, and potential clients or whatever that is, as servant-hearted individuals or organizations. That's the qualifier for this stuff. They can run JCPenney for all I care and be servant-hearted and have a mission there, or they can run United Way. Both are servant-hearted. Like, let's qualify those people. And then if someone's not servant-hearted and they're just in it for themselves, then we can push that to the side. There are nonprofits that are that way. You and I both know that. And there are for-profits that are definitely that way. So that's a good qualifier that's helped us as we navigate that.
And I think if you're self-aware and you're looking at your organization as an individual or an individual leader of an organization, and that is me. I put people first all the time. I put you are in a perfect position to sort of try something like this, because your mission is to make as much or raise as much money as possible to serve those who get you out of bed every morning. I'm going to do a lot for good here. The only thing holding me back is cash. Then go make it and do awesome things, which is really what I think this mindset shift has been. So Ryan, coming up against the end of the podcast, but I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to get a hold of you, reach out, pick your brain, set up a time just to kind of, hey, I've got a couple of ideas. I've got this thing. I have a nonprofit. I have a social enterprise idea. I've got a for-profit business that I think could have a social enterprise angle that could help a nonprofit. Anybody of those things. How do they get a hold of you? How do they reach out and begin a conversation with you over at Feast Over Famine?
Yeah. Well, first I just say, let's talk. We are, as an organization, we're in this to help make this thing blow up, So whether that's, you want to hop on for 30 minutes and there's some help and some ideas and we can spark that and you run with it, that's amazing. We want to do that. And whether we can help on a bigger level, that's great too. So I just want to say that, like, however we can serve organizations, that's awesome. We have a podcast on our own. So I just say, go to feastoverfamine.org, www.feastoverfamine.org. You can see all of our info on there. You can see some infographics on some of the stuff that we've talked about here. And then there's a contact form on there. My email is ryan@feastoverfamine.org. You're going to find that on the website. So I'll just share it here. Fill out the contact form, shoot me an email, whatever you guys, whatever's easier to get in touch. But yeah, we just want to, we want to see like thousands of social enterprises flourishing as soon as possible. And we're in it for the long haul. And we didn't talk about the impact investment piece much. Maybe we can do that on a future episode sometime. But as people get into that too, we're happy to coach and talk and dive in with everybody.
It's really great stuff. Yeah, I would encourage you to go and check them out. And of course, in the links to the show and in the show notes, all these links and numbers and emails will be available. So go click on that right now, especially if you have a bright idea that you think, I could use a little help on this, but I don't really know where to go with it. Or you're a nonprofit who has kind of seen the writing on the wall and needs a little boost or a little help or a little perspective on how to take that big, hairy, audacious goal and put it into action, regardless if it's going to be social enterprise or helping with scale or something like that. Ryan, thank you so much for being a guest on the official Do Good Better podcast. This was a real joy to talk about. It's something totally different. It's going to catch a lot of our listeners off guard in the best possible way, to think differently about how they raise more money for their mission. And thanks for being a guest here on the official Do Good Better podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I've enjoyed it a lot, and I love what you guys are doing. So
love it. We'll talk soon. Definitely. See ya.